What's up, Comic Universe? DPZ rolling solo once again, and this time I'm going to be doing a top 10 list Actually, I'm going to be doing two top 10 lists today, starting off with my top 10 favorite comic book events. Now, there are a lot of events, and I decided after seeing the official trailer for Jason Aaron's next big Marvel event, War of the Realms, I decided, you know what? Let me do a top 10 list of favorite comic book events. And I'm really hoping that Jay and C-Dubs will someday do like their top 10 favorite events and worst events that they hate. You know. Now, for frame of reference, this is just my personal list. If you think a event should be higher or lower or not at all on the list, that's totally fine. No ill will against you. These are just my personal favorite events. So yeah, this is just pretty much my thoughts. This is pretty much my event. These are just my top 10 favorite events. Anyway, so let's get started with number 10. Number 10 is from IDW. We're starting off with an IDW event. We are going to be talking about Combiner Wars from Transformers. Transformers Combiner Wars was this big event that really was a cool idea. It really showed of what happens when, the Autobots and Decepticons don't have a war anymore, and there's some really cool Game of Thrones stuff with Starscream, who is, as you guys know, is my favorite Transformer. So it's cool to see Starscream in action. And the fights are really cool between the Combiners, and you even get to see a new Combiner. I don't want to say what the new Combiner is if you haven't read the event. But yeah, if you're a Transformers fan, definitely check out Transformers Combiner Wars. Anyway, moving right along to number 9. Now, number 9 is a lesser-known event, but I think it's pretty cool. It is called Day of Judgment. Now, Day of Judgment is a big DC event that Jeff Johns wrote. That this was like his first big event, and for those who don't know, this was kind of like Hal Jordan's quote-unquote resurrection. This is when the time frame when he was brought back as the Spectre. For those who don't know what the full event is, pretty much what has happened is that the Renegade Angel Asmodal has taken over the Spectre and is waging war on heaven and earth, and the Justice League, along with all the DC magical characters, are brought together to combat him, and this leads to the resurrection of the kind of resurrection of Hal Jordan. Anyway, so I know, admittedly, in Green Lantern Rebirth, they kind of retcon some stuff in here, but still, I think it's pretty fun. DC really knows how to use their magical characters more than more than Marvel, whose name is not Doctor Strange. Seriously, every time they try to do a Ghost Rider book, I think it flies on everyone's fucking radar. But that's neither here nor there. So let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is Original Sin. This is a little polarizing for people. It's kind of polarizing. I really enjoyed it. It's like a cool murder mystery. Jason Aaron and Mike Deodato really know how to pull together a murder mystery, and it's really cool to see some of these characters team up. It was really cool, especially some of my favorite scenes are pretty much Doctor Strange and the Punisher working together. You have Emma Frost, Black Panther, and Ant-Man and Emma Frost working together. And for another team, you have Moon Knight, Gamora, and Winter Soldier. And it's pretty much the story is of who killed the Watcher. The Watcher's been murdered, and everyone is trying to look for him, while at the same time dealing with this knowledge bomb that the Orb of all people, this goddamn eyeball for a head, just drops a knowledge bomb with the Watcher's eyes. And yeah, it's a pretty fun story. I don't want to spoil any further in case you haven't read it, but it's a pretty cool story. I know it's a little polarizing for some people, but I personally enjoyed it. And like I said, these are just my personal favorites. Moving on now to The Secret Wars. For reference, this is the 80s one, not the Jonathan Hickman one. This was like the first major Marvel event. This miniseries was like this massive storyline that had major implications for the Marvel Universe. This is how Peter got the black suit. We got introduced to the Beyonder this way. we had so much in here in terms of Marvel. When you think of massive Marvel events, Secret Wars is pretty much one of the big stories in here that really just lets you know, wow, this is how Marvel does an event. This is how Marvel should do an event consistently. It was just an epic storyline that, you know, I really hope one day maybe they can pull it off in, you know, MCU. Really like to see that. So, moving right along to the next story, and this one is a little cheating because I didn't want to include, like, I just wanted to do events that encompass all characters from every aspect. That's why I didn't put, like, Nightfall or Death of Superman or something like that on here. But really, like, I thought about it, I was like, well, these characters kind of have their own events in their own right. So, yeah, X-Men Dark Phoenix Saga. Dark Phoenix Saga is one of the essential X-Men stories with good cause. It is a tragic story for the fall of Jean Grey. There's just some beautiful moments in here. When you think X-Men stories, you think of Dark Phoenix Saga, and I'm really hoping the movie really comes through. Although with all these pushbacks, it's making me worry more and more. Anyway, so let's move on to, we've now come to the top 5. What are my top 5 favorite events in Marvel and DC? And, of course, independent, because I did mention Combiner Wars. Come on, DPZ, get the fuck together. Anyway, so moving right along to number 5, World War Hulk. World War Hulk is a pretty straightforward comic, guys. As you guys know, the Hulk's my favorite superhero, so to see him tear ass across the Marvel Universe and beat the shit out of everybody who more or less just hated him and, you know, betrayed him. Also, it's a beautiful fuck you to Civil War and everything else in between, because, yeah, Greg Pak clearly did not like Civil War, and he showed it when he had Hulk beat the shit out of Iron Man and everyone else. Oh, man. That was, it's kind of gratifying, and it's not a deep thinking, super event. It's more like an event that, you know, is kind of pulse-pounding and really just fun. If you're a Hulk fan, you really would enjoy World War Hulk. So, moving on to number 4, Blackest Night. You know how most events have, like, oh, it's the return of such and such, or the death of such and such. The funny thing is, Jeff Johns went, why not have deaths and returns? And it's pretty much a super-powered zombie apocalypse. Yeah. This had some great build-up in Green Lantern, as well as some excellent payoff, some excellent turns in here. We got to see some cool stuff with Sinestro and Hal, and we got some returns of characters that we weren't expecting. And this really affected all points of the DC universe. It was just a cool story. It was just a really kick-ass story, more or less. Anyway, so sticking with DC, we've now moved on to the big 3, and let's kick it off with none other than Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is how a DC, you know, there's going to be multiple events throughout DC's history, but I honest to God don't think never will they ever be able to top Crisis on Infinite Earths. When you think of DC events, you think of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and think about all the implications it had with the DC Universe from then up until now. You know, that comic, you know, changed the face of DC Comics and changed so many characters. You know, it was the death of Barry Allen and pre-Crisis Supergirl. It was, you know, the time when Wally got to shine. There was so much in Crisis on Infinite Earths that, you know, changed like I said, it was the big thing that changed it. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm kind of morbidly curious of how they're going to pull it off in the DCCW universe. Yeah, I'm curious. Anyway, so, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is Acts of Vengeance. Acts of Vengeance is an event that not a lot of people talk about, and I don't know why, because it's so simple but so effective. It's basically all the Marvel villains gathering together and be like, hey, how about you fight my guy if I'll fight your guy? And I like villain stories. I really do like villain stories. So, yeah, I love that story. So, yeah, I was just like, it's so simple. It does kind of drag a bit at some points, but I think just some of the fights in here, like Thor and Juggernaut and Killer Shark and Wolverine and Daredevil versus Ultron, there were so many fights in here that made you go, holy shit. So yeah, Acts of Vengeance, loved it. Now before we get on to number 1, let's talk about some of the honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. So, here's some honorable mentions, in no particular order. Starting off with Forever Evil. I love villain stories. I love villains, and DC knows how to do villains. And Jeff Johns had all of the characters he knows how to write best together to, to be a team to fight the crime syndicate. Yeah. Anyway, another event worth noting is Sinestro Corps War. Another good Green Lantern event that kind of spiraled into a big DC event. It was very close on here, and originally it was going to be on the list, but I thought about it and was like, nah, I really kind of dig Combiner Wars more than Sinestro Corps War. Just a little more. And I know that sounds a little blasphemous, but hey, it's my list, my rules. And again, it's the same with, Forever Evil. It's just, again, my list, my rules, so I decided to do a quick little, honorable mention to it. So anyway, let's move. So what is my number 1 favorite event? It's the one event that everybody if you're a comic book fan, whether you be Marvel or DC or what have you, you know about this event. And that is the Infinity Gauntlet. That's right, the Infinity Gauntlet. The epic that was written by Jim Starlin, drawn by Ron Garney and George Perez. This is the essential Marvel event, in my opinion. As much as I love Secret Wars, Infinity Gauntlet really I love Secret Wars. I really do. I really love Secret Wars, and it is an essential Marvel event. But I think when you think of Marvel events, or even comic book events, I, honest to God, think Infinity Gauntlet is how you do a proper event. You have the heroes, fighting this villain that they're not even sure they can beat. Like, they are terrified throughout this comic of taking on Thanos, who is essentially godlike at this point. So, you have the heroes in just this hopeless situation. You have just this array of characters coming together to more or less just give one last fight against a character who is, all evil, essentially. So, I love the shit out of this comic. It's a great event. Like I said, I think it's in terms of it's probably Marvel's best event. If I was to rank if I was being non-biased, I would have to say that it would be this one, then Secret Wars, and then I would say Dark Phoenix Saga. Those would be the 3 big Marvel events every comic book fan, or if you're just a Marvel fan, would have to read. But that's just my opinion. So, Infinity Gauntlet. Again, that's just me. That's just my personal favorite event. But, yeah, and it was cool to see it kind of adapted into the movie. I mean, it took a little bit of Infinity Gauntlet with a bit of Infinity Quest and Infinity. But, yeah. Also, I forgot to mention Infinity. That's also my honorable mentions. Yeah, anyway. So, like I said, guys, there is pretty much my top 10 favorite of comic book events. Just comment below, let us know here on Comic Universe. Maybe you'll see a top 10 event list from C-Dubs or Jay in the near future. And again, like I said, this is just my personal favorites. If you think an event should have been higher or lower on the list or not at all, totally fine. No problem with that. These are just my personal favorites. And if you're new here, just remember to Hulk smash that subscribe button and be a part of Earth's Mightiest Subscribers and share across all forms of social media. I'm C-Dubs. I hope you all enjoyed this list, and stay tuned because since we've talked about the best, it's time to talk about the worst. But that's another time in the YOUniverse.